If you're watching, babe, I'm sorry, but I don't think that we will ever be able to obtain this level of closeness. What is up, everybody, and welcome to my review for Together. This is a new body horror romance film directed and written by Michael Shanks, and it stars Dave Franco and Allison Brie. I've had this movie on my radar ever since it premiered at South by Southwest earlier this year. A few movie critics that I enjoy watching were able to catch it at its premiere and have done nothing but hype it up ever since then, with some to this day still saying it is their favorite horror movie of the year. And this has been a pretty good year for horror with releases like Companion and Sinners, so I've been very excited to check this movie out. The basic premise here is you have this couple played by Dave Franco and Allison Brie, as I mentioned, whose relationship is going through a bit of a rough patch, and so they make a big change by moving from the big city to the small town country. But while discovering the area of their new home, they unfortunately fall victim to a curse that will actually bring them closer together than they ever could have imagined, but not in the ways that they ever possibly could have expected. Now, as I do with pretty much all movies that I have a lot of anticipation for, I completely put the blinders on as it pertains to any promotional material for this movie. I didn't check out a trailer or read a premise or anything like that. I pretty much only knew who was in the movie, and I recommend that you approach this movie the exact same way, because I've gone on tangents before how, specifically in the horror genre, trailers these days just show way too much of the movie before you've even seen it, and you definitely want all the shocking events and reveals that this movie has to offer to hit you for the first time as you are watching the movie for the first time. You don't want to know anything ahead of time. So go into this movie as blind as you possibly can. It's definitely the best way to experience it. I myself was just going off of the trust that I have in a few movie critics that I watch, that this was going to deliver one of the best horror experiences of the year. But did this movie deliver on that excitement? Well, before I get into my likes and dislikes, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel as well for more movie reviews and content. Get down in the comments below and tell me any thoughts you have on this movie. I would love to read what you guys have to say. Now let's get into the review. So starting with the positives, and this is a movie that really asks a lot of its two leads because they are essentially the only characters in the movie. There is a third, but even the couple of scenes that they get, the two lead stars are still the focus, and so they really have to carry the weight of this movie, and I think they do so very well. Admittedly, I am much more familiar with Dave Franco's work than I am Allison Brie. I do know of a lot of her projects, I just haven't seen as many of hers as I have with Dave Franco, but I wouldn't say that historically they have ever been praised for any of their dramatic roles or anything like that, and so this is a movie that I feel really pushes them to their limits and allows them to display their versatility as actors, and I would say that this is probably their best performances that either of them have given in their entire career. And I don't say that just because they have a lack of dramatic roles and so the one that they do give is really good and so it automatically becomes the best. I think you would consider this performance to be impressive if they were the most heralded of dramatic actors. They have great chemistry with one another, which really should not be to anyone's surprise because they are a couple in real life, and so they are very easily able to translate that onto the screen. And through them and their relationship, that chemistry really gives this movie a feeling of romance, which offers a very distinct contrast to a lot of the horrific and fucked up things you are seeing throughout the movie, which really helps elevate the unique experience that this film has to offer. Now, as much as I am someone who is not a big fan of jump scares because I feel like in today's horror they are oftentimes too heavily relied upon, this movie actually does them really well and has a lot of good ones. They all feel earned, none of them feel cheap, and they offer some pretty scary imagery along with them that stuck with me throughout the entirety of the movie and once I got home. And that's another thing, I'm also not someone who is often scared from a movie, and I wouldn't say that this movie like scarred me or terrified me or anything, but there is a lot of actual scary shit in this movie, and I think if you are someone that does get a feeling of fear from horror movies, I think Together is one that will actually pry on those emotions within you, and that's coming from me, who is someone that often does not feel that. Even though I am a big horror fan, they typically don't scare me in any way, shape, or form, but this movie does give you a lot of things that you might be thinking about into your nightmares. But what I like the most about Together is the sense of humor that it has. This is by no means a horror comedy, but it does have its fair share of comedic moments. And being that this isn't a full-on horror comedy, I think it's some of the best implementation of humor into a horror movie that I have ever seen. Michael Shanks was able to pick the perfect spots within the script to have a comedic moment, and they never come at the expense of the tension or horrors that are taking place. You pair that with an Alison Brie and a Dave Franco who throughout their careers have proven to be very capable and talented comedic actors, and so they are able to adapt that vision from page to screen in flawless fashion. And so this movie got a lot more laughs out of me than I ever thought it would. It's not something I expected to experience in this movie, but it was an addition and an implementation that was very much welcomed. And lastly, I really liked how upfront this movie is with its messaging and the themes that it is exploring, because it's not a surface level movie. There is definitely some subtext here, but it's not one that forces you to use your brain all that much to fully understand. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy a movie here or there that you really have to get into the weeds over and dig really deep on, but not everything has to be an Hereditary or The Babadook to be layered yet enjoyable. And I think that is the case here with Together. They just flat out tell you what they want to tell you. They are very straightforward with the messaging, and they deliver it all in a very simple yet effective approach. And I don't know if you would consider this to be a elevated horror experience, but what tends to be the issue with those movies is that oftentimes they are too heavy or complicated for their own good to be found enjoyable by general audiences. And I don't think that will be an issue for Together. They are able to get their narrative and story across very easily and leave a very similar impact without feeling as weighty as some of those other movies that do a similar thing. Moving on to the negatives now, and I really only have two sort of big issues with the film. The first being that I kind of feel it is a movie that is a tale of two halves. I enjoy the second half of the movie way more than the first. It's just a film that I feel takes a bit too long to really get going, in my opinion. A lot of the horror and stuff like that takes place in the second half. The second half is where they really find that sense of humor and where I was getting a lot of the laughs. The first half of the movie is just really focused on the struggles of the current state of their relationship, and I wasn't as interested as I think they wanted me to be. Dave Franco's character is kind of insufferable for a lot of the first half of the movie, and then Alison Brie's character also has a few moments that kind of got an eye roll out of me. I still enjoy them a little bit as characters, and I do think they perform well, but for the first half of the movie, I just was not as interested as I would have liked to have been. And my second issue here is that the body horror never really did anything to impress me, and being that people were saying that this is the best horror movie of the year, I think I expected a lot more from that department. I think an issue that I have been facing as of late is that ever since The Substance came out, body horror has come back in a big way. It's a very popular and prominent subgenre in horror as of right now, and so we're seeing it in a lot of movies, and I think I'm becoming a bit desensitized to it. And they do it so well in The Substance with the practical effects. I mean, that was an Oscar nominated movie, so they definitely worked hard to make the project that they made. But that is now kind of the high that I am chasing from a lot of body horror movies, and maybe it's unfair to compare everything to that prestigious film. But in this movie, you know, a lot of the body horror, it's not as gory as I might have thought it would be. It's heavily CGI. There's not a lot of practical effects, if any, in this movie, and that's just not what I would prefer or the way I would prefer them to go about it. There's still some freaky moments in the movie, and it visually looks okay, and they can kind of make your skin crawl a little bit, but there was never a moment where I was wincing or crawling up into my chair or anything like that. And I just expected more from the body horror aspect of the movie than what I got. So yeah, guys, those are all of my thoughts on Together. It didn't quite reach the heights of best horror film of the year for me personally, but I could see it approaching my top 5, definitely probably within my top 10 once the year is all said and done. If you are a horror fan, then I definitely recommend you go check this movie out in theaters. It's got a very unique and interesting premise, and I think they do deliver on that premise. It has a lot of good scares in it as well that I think will only be enhanced by the movie theater experience. The body horror doesn't deliver to the level that I had hoped it would, but it is still visually entertaining. But at its core, it's just a super rock solid script that has a surprisingly good sense of humor, and it is all executed to perfection by its two leads in Dave Franco and Allison Brie. Once you do see this movie, make sure to come back to this video, get down in the comments and tell me what you thought about it. Make sure to also leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well for more movie reviews. I would love to have you here, and I will see everybody in my next one. Peace.